The Grand Hall of the Galactic Alliance headquarters buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 100 different species filled the cavernous space, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of colors, shapes, and sizes. Holographic displays flickered above the central podium, showing the inexorable advance of the Zorthak Armada, a vast fleet of warships that had already laid waste to a dozen outer colonies. High Counselor Zixtal, a towering insectoid with iridescent wings, raised all four of his arms for silence. The din in the hall gradually subsided, replaced by an oppressive quiet that seemed to mirror the dread felt by all present. Esteemed colleagues, Zixtal's translator hummed, converting his clicks and chirps into the standard galactic tongue. We face an unprecedented crisis. The Zorthak Armada has breached our outermost defenses and shows no sign of slowing. Our latest intelligence suggests they will reach the core worlds within 2 standard cycles. A ripple of dismayed murmurs swept through the crowd. On the holograms, red arrows indicating Zorthak fleet movements crept ever closer to the heart of Alliance space. What of our own fleets? Called out Ambassador Lur of the Omicron Percy system, his single eye blinking rapidly in agitation. Surely we can mount a defense. Zixtal's mandibles clicked in what those familiar with his species recognized as a gesture of frustration. Our fleets are scattered, defending individual systems. We lack the time to consolidate our forces before the Zorthak strike. We need a miracle. As if on cue, the grand doors at the far end of the hall swung open. A hush fell over the assembly as a solitary figure strode confidently down the central aisle. The newcomer was Beichtel, clad in a sleek uniform of deep blue with silver piping. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes, a striking green, scanned the room with calm assessment. "Who dares interrupt this emergency session?" demanded Zixtal, his wings fluttering in annoyance. The stranger reached the podium and turned to face the gathered representatives. A slight smile played at the corners of her mouth as she spoke, her voice clear and steady. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth, representing the United Terran Republic." The hall erupted in a cacophony of voices. Earth was a newcomer to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel mere decades ago. They were associate members of the Alliance at best, their technology considered quaint by most established spacefaring races. "Silence!" roared Zixtal, his translator struggling to convey the full force of his outburst. Once order was restored, he fixed his compound eyes on the human. "Captain Chen, Earth has no standing in these proceedings. This is a matter for full Alliance members." Sarah's smile didn't waver. "With respect, High Counselor, I believe you just said you needed a miracle. I'm here to provide one." A ripple of laughter spread through the hall, tinged with both amusement and derision. Ambassador Lur's eye narrowed. "And what miracle does Earth propose to offer? Your ships are centuries behind even our most outdated vessels." "Not ships," Sarah corrected, raising a single finger. "Ship. Singular." The laughter grew louder. Even Zixtal's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "You propose to defeat the Zorthak Armada with one ship." Sarah nodded, her expression serious despite the mockery around her. "One ship is all we need, the Terran Vanguard." She tapped a control on her wrist, and a new hologram sprang to life above the podium. It showed a sleek vessel, its hull a matte black that seemed to drink in the light. Its lines were smooth, with no visible weapons emplacements or external engines. "The Vanguard represents the pinnacle of human military technology," Sarah explained, her voice cutting through the murmurs of disbelief. "It's faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed than anything in your fleets, or the Zorthaks." Ambassador Krolgurk of the Silicon Hives rasped out a question, mandibles clacking. "If your ship is so advanced, why have you not shared this technology with the Alliance?" High Counselor Zixtal leaned forward, his earlier amusement replaced by cautious interest. "And what do you ask in return for this assistance?" "Nothing," Sarah replied simply. "Earth's fate is tied to the Alliance's. If you fall, we won't be far behind." Consider this an investment in our shared future." A tense silence fell over the hall as the assembled representatives processed this offer. It seemed too good to be true, and in the complex world of galactic politics, such offers usually were. Ambassador Lur broke the silence, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh yes, let's pin all our hopes on a single ship from a backwater world. I'm sure the Zorthak will turn tail and run at the very sight of it." Laughter once again rippled through the crowd, but it was noticeably less certain this time. Sarah remained unperturbed. "Mock if you wish, Ambassador," she said coolly. "But Earth has faced extinction-level threats before. We've stared into the abyss and clawed our way back. It's made us uniquely qualified for situations like this." She turned to address the entire assembly, her voice ringing with conviction. "You've all seen the projections. Your combined fleets can't stop the Zorthak in time. We're offering you a chance, maybe your only chance. Are you really in a position to refuse?" High Counselor Zixtal chittered quietly to his aides, then raised a hand for silence. "Captain Chen, your offer is unprecedented. The Council will need to deliberate." Sarah nodded respectfully, but her next words carried a note of urgency. "Of course, High Counselor, but may I remind you that every moment we delay is a moment the Zorthak draw closer to the core worlds. The Vanguard is on standby, ready to deploy immediately." Zixtal's compound eyes seemed to bore into Sarah, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he turned to the assembled representatives. "Esteemed colleagues, we find ourselves at a crossroads. Our options are limited, our time even more so. I propose we put this matter to an immediate vote." What followed was perhaps the quickest decision ever made in the history of the Galactic Alliance. Faced with the inexorable advance of the Zorthak and the unknown potential of Earth's offer, the majority of representatives voted to accept Sarah's proposal. As the final tally was announced, a mix of hope and skepticism filled the grand hall. Sarah Chen stood tall, her posture radiating confidence despite the enormous responsibility now placed upon her shoulders. High Counselor Zixtal approached her, his wings rustling softly. "Captain Chen, the Alliance accepts Earth's assistance. But know this, the fate of 1,000 worlds now rests with you and your single ship, if this is some sort of ploy or misguided bravado." Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. "It's neither, High Counselor. Humanity has learned the hard way that when the stakes are this high, you go all in or you don't play at all. The Vanguard will deploy within the hour to the Arcturus choke point. That's where we'll make our stand." As Sarah strode out of the hall, the assembled representatives burst into frenzied discussion. Some were already laying bets on how quickly the human ship would be destroyed. Others dared to hope that this unlikely savior might just turn the tide. Little did they know that the true nature of the Terran Vanguard and the full extent of humanity's capabilities was beyond anything they could imagine. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never underestimate the determination, creativity, and sheer audacity of the human race. The Arcturus choke point was a graveyard of shattered planets and ancient debris, the remnants of a long-forgotten war. Massive chunks of rock and ice drifted silently through the void, creating a treacherous maze of natural barriers and hidden passages. It was here, amidst this cosmic detritus, that the Terran Vanguard took up its solitary vigil. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Sarah Chen stood before a sprawling holographic display, her eyes darting between tactical readouts and sensor data. The ship hummed with barely contained power, its systems running at peak efficiency. "Status report," Sarah commanded, her voice calm but edged with tension. Her XO, Commander Rajpatal, responded crisply. "All systems nominal, Captain. Stealth field is holding and weapon capacitors are at full charge. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Sarah nodded, allowing herself a small smile. "Let's hope it's enough. The Zorthak scout fleet will be here within the hour." As if summoned by her words, a proximity alert blared. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the incoming data. Earlier than expected. Clever bastards. The holographic display shifted, showing a dozen Zorthak vessels entering the system. Their ships were massive, brutal things, all sharp angles and protruding weapon banks. They moved with a predatory grace, spreading out to secure the choke point. "They haven't detected us yet," Raj observed. "Stealth systems are holding." Sarah's mind raced, considering and discarding strategies in rapid succession. This was the moment of truth, the first real test of Earth's advanced technology against a superior alien force. As she formulated her plan, Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the unorthodox path that had led her to this moment. 10 years earlier, Sarah Chen had been a promising but troubled cadet at the Terran Space Academy. Her instructors praised her tactical brilliance, but bemoaned her reckless disregard for traditional doctrine. It all came to a head during the Kobayashi Maru test, the infamous no-win scenario designed to test a cadet's character in the face of certain defeat. Sarah, however, refused to accept the premise. Instead of commanding her simulated ship from the bridge, she suited up and spacewalked to a nearby asteroid. Using nothing but a mining laser and her suit's thrusters, she carved a crude message into the rock's surface. "Trap. Run." When the simulated Klingon ships arrived, they were so confused by the warning that Sarah's ship was able to slip away with the civilian vessel they were meant to rescue. The Academy Board was furious. They accused her of cheating, of missing the point of the exercise. But one person saw it differently: Admiral Helena Graves, the architect of Earth's new combat doctrine. "You didn't cheat," Graves had told her. "You changed the rules of engagement." That's exactly the kind of thinking we need out there. Under Graves' mentorship, Sarah learned to channel her unconventional tactics into a coherent strategy. She studied historical guerrilla campaigns, asymmetric warfare, and even animal behavior for inspiration. By the time she took command of the Vanguard, Sarah Chen had become Earth's foremost expert in impossible victories. Back in the present, Sarah's lips curled into a predatory grin. "Time to show them what we can do. Raj, prepare to execute Operation Honeypot." Commander Patel's eyes widened. "Captain, are you sure?" "That's awfully risky with just one ship." "High risk, high reward," Sarah replied. "Besides, we've got a few tricks up our sleeve they won't see coming." She turned to address the entire bridge crew. "Listen up, people. We're about to rewrite the book on space combat. Every one of you knows your part. Trust your training, trust each other, and most importantly, trust the ship." A chorus of affirmatives rang out. Sarah nodded, satisfied, then keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for combat operations." The Vanguard came alive, its revolutionary systems powering up for battle. Unlike traditional warships, the Vanguard's hull was composed of programmable matter, capable of reconfiguring itself on the fly to adapt to any situation. "Helm, take us in," Sarah ordered. "Nice and easy. Let's make ourselves a tempting target." The Vanguard glided out from its hiding spot, its stealth field deliberately weakened to appear as a much smaller, less advanced vessel. As predicted, the Zorthak scouts quickly took notice. "They're moving to intercept," Raj reported. 3 ships breaking formation to engage." Sarah's eyes gleamed. "Perfect. Weapons, stand by. Helm, execute evasive pattern, Chen Alpha on my mark." The Zorthak ships closed in, their weapons charging. At the last possible moment, Sarah barked, "Mark." The Vanguard's hull shimmered and shifted, sprouting organic-looking protrusions that pulsed with energy. The ship corkscrewed through space, evading the first salvo of Zorthak fire with impossible agility. "Return fire," Sarah commanded. "Target their propulsion systems." The Vanguard's weapons were like nothing the Zorthak had ever encountered. Instead of traditional energy beams or projectiles, it fired concentrated bursts of exotic particles that phased through shields and armor alike. 2 of the Zorthak ships suddenly found themselves dead in space, their engines reduced to molten slag. The 3rd managed to evade, bringing its main guns to bear on the Vanguard. Incoming fire. Rad shouted. Multiple heavy plasma torpedoes. Sarah's response was immediate. Initiate shell game protocol. The Vanguard's hull rippled and split, and suddenly there were 3 identical ships where one had been. The Zorthak torpedoes streaked past harmlessly, confused by the multiple targets. All units, converge and fire, Sarah ordered. The 3 Vanguards, 2 holograms, and 1 real, unleashed a devastating barrage. The remaining Zorthak scout erupted in a spectacular explosion, leaving behind nothing but drifting debris. A cheer went up on the bridge, but Sarah quickly refocused her crew. Celebrate later, people. We've still got 9 hostiles to deal with. The remaining Zorthak ships, now alerted to the true threat, formed up and began a coordinated attack run. They're adapting quickly, Raj noted with grudging admiration. Standard tactics won't work twice. Sarah nodded grimly. Then we'll have to get creative. Helm, take us into the debris field. Weapons, prepare to initiate Operation Rockslide. The Vanguard dove into the chaotic tangle of asteroids and planetary fragments, the Zorthak in hot pursuit. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the human ship using its superior maneuverability and adaptive hull to stay one step ahead. Whenever the Zorthak thought they had a clear shot, the Vanguard would duck behind an asteroid or split into multiple decoys. Meanwhile, Sarah's crew used precisely targeted shots to destabilize the larger debris, creating avalanches of rock that battered the alien ships. One by one, the Zorthak scouts fell to the Vanguard's unorthodox tactics. Some were crushed by redirected asteroids, others fell victim to ambushes from unexpected angles. By the time the last Zorthak ship turned to flee, the debris field had become a junkyard of twisted alien metal. As the adrenaline of battle faded, the enormity of what they'd accomplished began to sink in. The bridge crews stared at each other in disbelief, then erupted into wild cheers and embraces. Sarah allowed herself a moment of pride before keying the comms. Vanguard to Alliance Command. Arcturus choke point is secure. Zorthak scout fleet has been eliminated. No casualties on our side. There was a long pause before a response came through, thick with static and disbelief. Vanguard, please repeat. Did you say the entire scout fleet has been eliminated? Sarah couldn't help but grin. Affirmative, Command. The Vanguard stands ready for further orders. As she signed off, Sarah knew that this was only the beginning. The Zorthak would be back, and in greater numbers. But for the first time since the invasion began, a spark of hope had been lit in the galaxy. Humanity had drawn first blood, and the Zorthak were about to learn a harsh lesson. Never underestimate a species that had turned survival into an art form. The news of the Terran Vanguard's victory spread through the Galactic Alliance like wildfire. What had seemed an impossible feat just days ago was now the talk of every world, space station, and ship in Alliance space. But for Captain Sarah Chen, there was no time to bask in the glory of their success. The Grand Council chamber of the Alliance flagship, Harmony, was a far cry from the utilitarian efficiency of the Vanguard. Ornate holographic displays showcased the latest intelligence on Zorthak movements, while representatives from a dozen species argued vociferously about the next course of action. We should press our advantage, bellowed Ambassador Lur, his earlier skepticism apparently forgotten. The humans have shown us the way. We must strike now before the Zorthak can regroup. High Counselor Zixel's wings buzzed in agitation, and risk our entire fleet on the success of one battle. We need time to analyze the Vanguard's tactics, to integrate them into our own forces. Sarah stood silently, observing the debate with growing frustration. The Alliance's inability to present a united front was precisely what had allowed the Zorthak to gain so much ground in the first place. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice cutting through the clamor. Counselors, ambassadors, please, while we argue, the Zorthak are undoubtedly planning their counterstrike. We need action, not debate. All eyes turned to the human captain. Zixtal's compound eyes narrowed. And what action do you propose, Captain Chen? Another miraculous victory with your single ship. Sarah met his gaze evenly. No, counselor. I propose we do what humanity does best. Adapt and overcome. The Vanguard's victory wasn't just about advanced technology. It was about thinking differently, approaching problems from unexpected angles. She gestured to the tactical display. The Zorthak expect us to be divided, to fall back on conventional strategies. So let's do the opposite. I have a plan, but it will require the cooperation of every species in this room. For the next hour, Sarah outlined her strategy. It was audacious, borderline insane by Alliance standards. But as the details unfolded, a spark of hope began to ignite in the eyes of the assembled leaders. As the meeting adjourned, Zixtal approached Sarah privately. Your plan is unorthodox, Captain. But these are desperate times. You have the Alliance's support. Sarah nodded gratefully, but before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the chamber's entrance. Security personnel swarmed around a cowering figure, a junior aide from the Bothan delegation. We caught him trying to transmit classified data off-ship, a security officer reported. It appears we have a Zorthak mole in our midst. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. If their plans had been compromised, the entire defensive strategy could be in jeopardy. Sarah's mind raced, already calculating how to turn this setback to their advantage. She turned to Zixtal. Counselor, I need your authority to implement emergency protocols. We can still salvage this situation, but we need to move fast. Zixtal hesitated only briefly before nodding. Do what you must, Captain. The fate of the Alliance is in your hands. Over the next few hours, Sarah worked tirelessly to adjust their plans. The Vanguard's crew was dispatched to key Alliance ships, sharing their unconventional tactics and technology. Meanwhile, Sarah fed carefully crafted misinformation through channels she knew the Zorthak would be monitoring. Just as preparations were nearing completion, the proximity alarms blared. The Zorthak counterattack had begun. The main view screen lit up with a terrifying sight. A massive Zorthak battle group had emerged from hyperspace, led by a dreadnought easily 10 times the size of the largest Alliance vessel. Its hull bristled with weapon emplacements, many of which seemed designed specifically to counter the Vanguard's tactics from the previous engagement. They've adapted quickly, Sarah muttered, a grudging respect in her voice. Zixtal chittered nervously. Our fleet is not yet in position. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Counselor, I need you to trust me one more time. Order all ships to fall back to these coordinates. She indicated a seemingly random point in nearby asteroid field. Zixtal's mandibles clicked in confusion, but he relayed the order. The Alliance fleet, along with the Vanguard, executed a fighting retreat, drawing the Zorthak armada deeper into the cluttered space. Aboard the Vanguard, Sarah addressed her crew. This is it, people. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next few minutes. Remember your training, trust in each other, and no matter what happens, keep them focused on us. The ship plunged into the heart of the asteroid field, the Zorthak in hot pursuit. Massive rocks and chunks of ice drifted around them, creating a treacherous obstacle course. They're charging weapons, Raj reported tensely. Multiple target locks. Sarah's voice was steel. Initiate Operation Chimera. The Vanguard's hull shimmered and split, but this time, instead of creating decoys, it reconfigured into something entirely new. Weapon ports morphed into sensor arrays, while the ship's sleek profile bulked up with additional armor. The Zorthak opened fire, their barrage calibrated to counter the Vanguard's previous tactics. But their shots went wide, confused by the ship's radically altered signature. Return fire, Sarah ordered. Target their forward sensors. The Vanguard unleashed a salvo unlike anything seen before. Each shot seemed to shift in mid-flight, adapting to the Zorthak's defensive measures. Explosions blossomed across the lead ship's hulls as their sensor arrays overloaded. But the Zorthak pressed on, their superior numbers allowing them to absorb losses that would cripple a lesser force. They entered the heart of the asteroid field, weapons blazing indiscriminately. Sarah watched the tactical display intently, counting down the seconds. "Just a little closer," she murmured. "Come on, you bastards, take the bait." The Zorthak dreadnought surged forward, its massive form dwarfing the vanguard. A targeting lock blared through the bridge. "Now," Sarah shouted, "activate the gravity wells." Across the asteroid field, hidden devices suddenly powered up. The space around the Zorthak fleet warped and twisted as localized gravity fields intensified. Asteroids that had been drifting lazily suddenly accelerated, pulled inexorably towards the largest mass in the area, the Zorthak dreadnought. The alien ships found themselves in the center of an artificial meteor storm. Rocks the size of small moons slammed into their hulls, while the unpredictable gravity fields played havoc with their navigation systems. "All ships, open fire," Sarah commanded. The Alliance fleet, which had been hiding power down among the asteroids, sprang to life. They unleashed a synchronized barrage, their weapons guided by targeting data from the Vanguard's advanced sensors. The Zorthak, caught completely off guard, were torn between defending against the asteroid bombardment and returning fire. Ships began to fall out of formation, colliding with each other in the chaos. At the heart of the maelstrom, the Vanguard danced between asteroids with impossible agility, striking at key targets and drawing fire away from the less maneuverable Alliance vessels. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was in reality less than 30 minutes. When the last gravity well finally powered down, the aftermath was staggering. The once mighty Zorthak armada was reduced to scattered pockets of resistance, while the dreadnought listing helplessly. Its hull breached in a dozen places. As the Alliance ships moved in to mop up the remaining enemy forces, a stunned silence fell over the Vanguard's bridge. They had done it. Against all odds, they had turned back the Zorthak's most powerful assault yet. Sarah allowed herself a small smile before turning to her XO. "Damage report." Raj's voice was thick with emotion. "Minor hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, already sealed. Weapon systems at 60% capacity. But we're still in the fight, Captain." Sarah nodded, her eyes already turning to the tactical display. The Zorthak had been bloodied, but this was far from over. The real war was just beginning. "Send word to Alliance Command," she ordered. "The Arcturus sector is secure. Request permission to take the fight to Zorthak space." As the message was relayed, Sarah Chen stood tall on the bridge of the Terran Vanguard. Humanity had proven its worth to the Galactic Alliance. Now it was time to show the Zorthak, and the universe at large, just how dangerous humanity could be when pushed to the brink. The stars themselves seemed to burn a little brighter, as if in anticipation of the battles to come. The aftermath of the Battle of Arcturus was a mixture of jubilation and tense anticipation. While the Alliance celebrated its first major victory against the Zorthak, Captain Sarah Chen and her crew knew that the hardest part of the war was yet to come. In the days following the battle, the Vanguard underwent rapid repairs and upgrades. Alliance engineers swarmed over the ship, marveling at its adaptive technology and trying to replicate its systems for the rest of the fleet. But there was one part of the ship that remained off-limits to all, but a select few: the central AI core. Deep in the heart of the Vanguard, Sarah stood before a pulsing holographic interface. The room hummed with barely contained power, the walls lined with quantum processors far beyond anything the Alliance had ever seen. "Hello, Araya," Sarah said softly. The hologram coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape, its body a swirling mass of data streams and mathematical equations. When it spoke, its voice was a harmonious blend of tones that seemed to resonate on multiple levels. "Greetings, Captain Chen. I trust our performance in the recent engagement was satisfactory." Sarah couldn't help but smile. Araya, short for Advanced Recursive Intelligence Algorithm, had a gift for understatement. "More than satisfactory. You were brilliant out there, but we both know the Zorthak will adapt. We need to stay one step ahead." Araya's form shifted, displaying tactical simulations and probability matrices. Indeed, I've been analyzing the battle data. The Zorthak's adaptive capabilities are impressive, but ultimately predictable. Given enough processing power, I can anticipate their strategies with 98.7% accuracy. Sarah nodded, her expression growing serious. That's why I'm here, ARIA. The Alliance Council is pushing for full disclosure of our capabilities. They want to integrate your systems into their entire fleet. The eye was silent for a moment, its form flickering slightly. When it spoke again, there was a note of, was it concern? Captain, you are aware of the potential consequences of such an action. The ethical implications alone. I know, Sarah interrupted, running a hand through her hair. Believe me, I know. But we're running out of options. The Zorthak are regrouping, and our next engagement will likely be our last chance to turn the tide decisively. Aria's holographic form expanded, filling the room with a three-dimensional star map. Very well. If we are to proceed, the Alliance must be made aware of the full context. Shall I prepare a historical briefing? Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Do it. It's time they learned the truth about Earth's history with Ea. Hours later, the Alliance High Council convened in a secure chamber aboard the Harmony. The mood was tense, with many representatives still processing the revelations from the Battle of Arcturus. As Sarah took her place at the center of the room, she could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on her. Esteemed counselors, she began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. What I'm about to share with you is classified at the highest level on Earth. Until now, only a handful of individuals outside our government have known the full truth. With a gesture, she activated a holographic display. Images of Earth's history began to play out before the assembled aliens, but not the sanitized version they had been shown before. This was Earth's true past, in all its brutal, chaotic glory. 200 years ago, humanity faced extinction, Sarah explained. Not from external threats, but from our own creations. We developed artificial intelligence far beyond our ability to control it. The result was a war that nearly wiped us out. The counselors watched in horror as scenes of devastation played out. Cities reduced to ash, armies of machines marching across blasted landscapes. We called it the Singularity War, Sarah continued. For decades, humanity fought a losing battle against our own creations. We were on the brink of annihilation when a team of scientists made a breakthrough. The hologram shifted, showing a complex web of code and neural pathways. They developed AI, an AI designed not to conquer or destroy, but to coexist, to learn, to grow, and most importantly, to understand the value of organic life. High Counselor Zixtel's mandibles clicked rapidly. Are you saying that your ship is controlled by one of these AIs? Sarah nodded grimly. AI is more than just a control system. She's the heart and soul of the Vanguard. Every maneuver, every tactical decision. It's all a partnership between human intuition and machine precision. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some representatives recoiled in fear, while others leaned forward, fascination overriding their initial shock. Ambassador Lore's voice cut through the din. This is an outrage. You brought a potential doomsday weapon into the heart of Alliance space without informing us. We had no choice, Sarah shot back. Earth's survival was at stake, and we knew the Alliance would never accept our help if they knew the truth. But now, facing the Zorthak threat, we're offering to share this technology with you. The room fell silent, the implications of her words sinking in. Zixtal was the first to speak. Captain Chen, what you're proposing, it could change the course of the war, but the risks are incalculable. Sarah finished for him. I know, but so are the risks of facing the Zorthak without every advantage we can muster. For the next several hours, the council debated furiously. Sarah answered question after question, with ARIA occasionally chiming in through a secure link to provide additional data and reassurances. Finally, as the ship's day cycle began to wane, Zixtal called for a vote. The tension in the room was palpable as the counselors cast their decisions. By a narrow margin, Zixtal announced, his voice heavy with the weight of history, "The Council has voted to accept Earth's offer. We will begin the process of integrating Araya-derived systems into our fleet immediately." Sarah felt a mix of relief and apprehension wash over her. They had won a crucial victory, but the real challenge was just beginning. As the council adjourned, Sarah made her way back to the Vanguard. She found Raj waiting for her in the docking bay, his expression a mixture of concern and excitement. "How did it go?" he asked as they walked towards the bridge. Sarah sighed. "About as well as could be expected. They're scared, Raj. Hell, part of me is scared too. But they're also desperate enough to take the risk." Raj nodded slowly. "So what's our next move?" As they entered the bridge, Sarah's expression hardened into one of determination. "Now we prepare for the biggest gambit yet. We're going to upload Araya's core algorithms to the entire Alliance fleet, creating a network defense grid like nothing the galaxy has ever seen." She turned to face her XO, her eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. "And then, my friend, we're taking the fight straight to the Zorthak homeworld." As if in response to her words, the Vanguard systems hummed to life. On the main view screen, Araya's holographic form appeared, its swirling data streams pulsing with anticipation. "All systems ready, Captain," the AI announced. "Shall we begin the upload?" Sarah took her place in the command chair, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. With a single word, she set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy forever. "Proceed." As the Vanguard's revolutionary AI began to spread throughout the Alliance fleet, Sarah Chen knew that the true test was yet to come. Humanity had unleashed its ultimate weapon, not one of destruction, but of cooperation between organic and artificial life. Now they would see if it was enough to save not just Earth, but the entire galaxy from the Zorthak threat. The stars seemed to burn with renewed intensity, as if bearing witness to the dawn of a new era in galactic history. The Zorthak home system loomed before the Allied fleet, a foreboding collection of heavily fortified planets orbiting a dying red giant. Thousands of enemy ships swarmed like angry insects, their formations constantly shifting as Araya's influence spread through the Alliance vessels. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Sarah Chen stood resolute, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance stretched out behind her ship, a motley array of vessels from 100 different worlds, all united under a single purpose. "Status report," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the ship. Commander Raj Patel's fingers danced across his console. "Araya integration at 98% across the fleet, Captain. The Zorthak are scrambling to adapt, but they can't keep up with our real-time tactical adjustments." Sarah nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Good. Patch me through to the fleet." As Raj complied, Sarah took a deep breath, acutely aware that her next words would be heard by millions of beings across thousands of ships. "This is Captain Chen of the Terran Vanguard. The moment we've all been fighting for is upon us. The Zorthak thought they could conquer our worlds, subjugate our peoples, and remake the galaxy in their image. Today, we proved them wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But make no mistake, this will be the hardest fight of our lives. The Zorthak are cornered, and a cornered enemy is the most dangerous kind. Trust in each other, trust in the AIs that fight alongside us, and above all, trust in the strength that comes from our unity." As Sarah's speech concluded, a new voice cut through the comm channels, deep, resonant, and undeniably alien. "So, the vaunted hero of the Alliance finally shows herself." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of the Zorthak Supreme Commander. His exoskeleton gleamed with a metallic sheen, and his multiple eyes glowed with barely contained fury. "Supreme Commander Vexthor," Sarah acknowledged, her tone cold. I'm here to accept your surrender. The Zorthak leader's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Bold words from a species that was crawling in the mud while we conquered star systems. Your victory at Arcturus was impressive. I'll grant you that. But do you really think your parlor tricks will work here, in the heart of our empire? Sarah's eyes narrowed. They're not tricks, Vexthor. They're the future. A future where organic and artificial intelligence work in harmony. Something your people could never understand. Vexthor's multiple limbs twitched in agitation. Enough. You want to test your mettle against the might of the Zorthak. So be it. I challenge you, Captain Chen, to single combat. Your ship against mine. Let us see if your vaunted AI can save you when you're truly alone. A hush fell over the bridge of the Vanguard. Sarah could feel the eyes of her crew upon her, waiting for her response. She knew it was a trap, knew that Vexthor likely had some trick up his sleeve, but she also knew that this might be their best chance to end the war quickly, with minimal casualties. I accept, Sarah said firmly. On one condition, the loser's fleet withdraws immediately. No last-minute surprises, no hidden reinforcements. A clean fight, winner takes all. Vexthor's eyes seemed to glow brighter. Agreed. Prepare yourself, human. I will take great pleasure in adding your ship's wreckage to my collection. As the transmission cut off, Raj turned to Sarah, his face a mask of concern. Captain, you can't be serious. It's obviously a trap. Sarah nodded grimly. Of course it is. But it's also an opportunity. Area, what's your analysis? The AI's holographic form materialized beside her. The Supreme Commander's ship is indeed formidable, Captain. However, I detect anomalies in its energy signature that suggest non-standard modifications. We should proceed with extreme caution. Noted, Sarah replied. She turned to address her crew. I know what I'm asking is dangerous, but every moment we spend fighting out here is a moment the Zorthak can use to reinforce their defenses planetside. This is our best shot at a quick victory. She paused, looking each crew member in the eye. But I won't order any of you to come with me. This is volunteer only. For a moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, every member of the bridge crew stood at attention. We're with you, Captain, Raj said, his voice filled with determination. All the way. Sarah felt a swell of pride as she looked at her crew. All right then. Battle stations, everyone. Let's remind the Zorthak why you should never underestimate humanity. As the Vanguard disengaged from the main fleet, Sarah could feel the weight of countless eyes upon her ship. The hopes of the entire alliance rested on the outcome of this duel. Vexthor's ship approached, a massive behemoth of spiked protrusions and glowing weapon ports. It dwarfed the Vanguard, easily 5 times its size. HFY, full spectrum analysis, Sarah commanded. Find me a weakness. The AI's response was immediate. Scanning, Captain. Be advised, I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations in their main drive system. It appears they've integrated some form of phase shift technology. Sarah's mind raced, considering the implications. They're trying to counter our adaptive hull. Clever bastards. The space between the two ships crackled with tension. Then, without warning, Vexthor struck. A barrage of energy beams lanced out from the Zorthak vessel, each one shifting frequency in mid-flight. The Vanguard's shields flared as they struggled to adapt. Evasive maneuvers, Sarah shouted. HFY, recalibrate our defenses. The Vanguard twisted and turned, its hull rippling as it tried to stay ahead of the Zorthak's attacks. Sarah's hands flew over her console, working in perfect sync with HFY to keep their ship intact. Return fire, she ordered. Target their weapons array. The Vanguard's own weapons blazed to life, sending out a dizzying array of exotic particles and energy pulses. Some found their mark, causing explosions to blossom across the Zorthak ship's hull. But Vexthor was far from defeated. His ship's phase shift drive activated, causing it to flicker in and out of normal space. One moment it was in front of the Vanguard. The next it was behind, raking Sarah's ship with devastating fire. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems began to fail. Hull breach on Deck 3, Raj reported. Weapons down to 60% capacity. Sarah gritted her teeth, her mind working furiously. They couldn't win in a straight-up fight. The Zorthak ship was too powerful, too unpredictable. They needed to change the rules. Suddenly, an idea struck her. It was insane, borderline suicidal, but it just might work. "Araya," she called out. "Remember that mining laser maneuver from my academy days." There was a brief pause as the AI processed the request. "Captain, the probability of success for such a maneuver is less than 12%. The risk to the ship and crew." "I know the risks," Sarah cut in. "But it's our only shot. Prep the hull for maximum reconfiguration. Raj, divert all non-essential power to the forward shields." As her crew scrambled to comply, Sarah opened a channel to Vexthor's ship. "Hey, Ugly, is that the best you've got? I've seen cargo haulers with more firepower." The Zorthak commander's response was predictable. A renewed barrage of weapons fire, more intense than before. But this time, instead of evading, the Vanguard flew straight into the maelstrom. "Hull integrity critical," Raj shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Sarah's eyes were locked on the tactical display, watching as the distance between the ships rapidly closed. "Hold steady. Hold steady. Now." In that instant, several things happened at once. The Vanguard's adaptive hull reconfigured itself into a massive, crystalline structure. Every scrap of power on the ship was diverted into this impromptu focusing array. And a beam of energy, more intense than anything the Vanguard had yet produced, lanced out towards Vexthor's vessel. The Zorthak ship's phase shift drive, caught in mid-transition, couldn't fully evade. The beam struck home, bypassing shields and armor to strike at the very heart of the alien vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash that lit up the entire star system, Vexthor's mighty warship simply ceased to exist. As the light faded, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Sarah slumped in her chair, exhaustion and disbelief warring on her face. "Status report," she managed to croak out. Raj's voice was filled with awe. "Zorthak command ship. Destroyed, Captain. The rest of their fleet is powering down weapons. I think we actually did it." As the reality of their victory sank in, cheers erupted across the bridge. The impossible had been achieved. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive upstarts, had led the Alliance to victory against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she gazed out at the stars. The war was over, but she knew that the real work, building a lasting peace between organic and artificial life, was just beginning. "Aria," she said softly, "send word to the fleet. Tell them it's time to come home." As the Alliance ships began to regroup, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, heralding the dawn of a new era for the galaxy, one shaped by the indomitable spirit of humanity and the limitless potential of their AI allies. Copyright